All right, morning everyone. I hope you can hear me. We've gotten a good number, so we'll get straight into it. Thanks everyone for making time. I'll start with some classroom rules. With me is have Joan Talma co-hosting with me. She's on the side. I can't see her image. I guess you know how she looks. So the session will be roughly an hour. I'll take you through a brief presentation for about 30 minutes, and then you can ask any questions after. During the presentation, feel free to send your questions or anything on the chat section. Joanne is assisting with responding to that. And we'll have a few polls towards the end. So ideally, we want this to be a conversation. So again, feel free to ask or chat any questions away. So I guess we'll get right into it. So the first bit of the presentation is to introduce our company. So Belva Digital is a performance marketing agency, a lot of focus on value. We take great pride in our top 100 KPMG award we got a year or so ago. I always say that our trophy cabinet is better than Arsenal's. I hope there's no Arsenal fan here. If there is, please don't take any offense. We are also, trusted advisors with the likes of Google, the Twitter, and so forth. In terms of direction, we say that everything we do is founded on strategic thinking, built on data, and designed to deliver value. 7 years in business now. I always say from humble beginnings, from working from home to, again, now back to working from home, but at least with a bigger team and serving a bit more, a number of clients across a number of markets. Talking of clients, we have a good bunch of them, split across real estate to insurance to insurtech to banks and so forth. I'll get to meeting your host. Again, my name is Fred. I'm your host of today's webinar. I'm a few among other things in top 40, under 40 men in Kenya. My focus at Belva, I focus on product diversification as well as regional growth. I've previously worked for Google and IBM. Education background is I'm a coder, or at least I have coding background. Did my computer science from JKUAT. I've also done CIM. My co-host is Joan Talma. Joan has been in the agency space for years. Previously worked for Access Leo, Bin and Squad. She is currently responsible for media strategy and supervision of planning and buying regionally. All right, so get to the meat of this conversation today. What is brand immunity? And we'll start with, what happened. So to talk about immunity in the time of pandemic. So first question we ask is, who moved my cheese? And of course, COVID-19 has done that. We look at, got this chart off Neil Patel's blog and talks about, the different verticals and how they've been affected. This is global data. Couldn't find something, regional we could look at. I think this is better than nothing. So from the markets have been most affected is travel, construction, transportation, advertising. On the flip side, we're seeing, significant growth in media. We're seeing growth in food, finance, and energy. So the biggest question is, what does that mean for, most of us that are struggling? Does it mean we sit back and wait for the storm to pass? Absolutely not. So the idea is to adjust our sails and, march through the storm. We look at, there's an interesting trend. When we started this, when we set up the webinar, when you search for the keyword, should I continue advertising during the COVID-19? There were 3.3 billion searches. At the morning of this today, there were 4.7 billion searches of the same. So I think as marketers, this is the right conversation to have because we are clearly looking around, we're trying to find solutions. And I believe at the end of this conversation, you'll have found a few ideas you can run with. So what does it mean to keep your brand alive, and where do we start? I always emphasize that brands have a personality, and brands should always deliver value, or focus on value proposition. And brands are not your product, and your product is not your brand. Brand is bigger than your product. But at the end of the day, we have to look at your brand, you have to look at your product, and you have to look at the experience you're hoping to deliver. And you can find the middle ground. That's your value proposition. That's what your brand exists for, which is really important to establish because that's the basis of having brand, building a brand during this time of crisis. And just to give examples of company missions, there's quite a number of everyone represented here. I hope you know your company mission. Just look at Safaricom. Safaricom focuses, basically on transforming lives. We talk about products and services that do that. In our case, we look at delivering business value. So everything we do, whether it's in marketing or developing solutions or designing them, at the end of the day, the bottom line, we have to deliver value for business. And just a quick brain teaser, and just to make sure that everyone has access to their chat. Which company do you think this mission belongs to? I'll give you guys a minute or a few seconds to send in your chat. See who gets it right. Hello, guys. If you can hear me and you can see the screen, please send the answers to the question, which is basically the mission statement below belongs to or is for which company? All right, I think a few brilliant minds here. You guys Googled a lot, huh? Looks like everyone got it apart from Kefa. Kefa, you said SpaceX. It's actually Microsoft. So Microsoft says that we exist to empower every person, every organization on the planet to achieve more. Not necessarily to sell, Windows or sell you software, but to empower, and main focus is on empowerment. Which brings us to this. So how do we keep our brand vision, and how do we keep our brands vibrant? So basically, let's start from our mission. Let's go back to the drawing board. What's our mission and what's our purpose for existence? I always say that no business should exist for the only reason to make a ton of money. We always want to make money, but that should not be the only driver. And then look at your industry, look at the space where you are in, identify areas where your organization can actually impact positively. So those are the things that we're going to discuss. Make sure that you've aligned on your mission, and make sure that then we can identify areas within our industry or vertical that we can do to drive positive impact. And how do you do that? Let's start with this. I think this is something I saw off LinkedIn the other day. Who is in the driver's seat, and who is leading digital transformation for your company? I think we would all agree that as much as we would want to say the CEO, the CTO, or whoever C-suite, COVID-19 is in charge, and sort of forced us to relook at everything we're doing. And adjust to that. The rule number one, so we have a few rules. We put about 5 of them. And then the rule number one is don't exploit the situation. Don't look at it and say people are desperate for bread, people are desperate for milk, for masks and sanitizers. How can I get into that space and make the most money? People always remember. People will not forget that post this what happened. You may take advantage of them at this point, but they will not forget beyond that. So instead of risking that kind of brand positioning, why not look at how we can actually provide solutions as opposed to exploiting? Rule number 2 is add value. As mentioned earlier, look at your brand, look at your industry, list out activities you can implement. What can you do? What can you action in your space that will actually add value to your target audience? And we put some together. Joanne, if you can hear me, you could carry on and just discuss a few of the suggestions we put.
Okay. Hi guys. So yeah, as a company, you have to look at the way you actually provide value to your customers and your potential customers. So we looked at 5 categories and brands that are actually leading the way in terms of offering help to Kenyans, basically. So we looked at finance and banking, and we saw Corp and KCB leading the pack, where they did reduction of interest rates on loans and mortgages, reducing transaction charges, upgrading online banking capabilities to reduce physical visits. Corp is actually leading the pack with this one. Well done to Corp. FMCG, Lifebuoy, EABL, Dettol have done a lot of CSR activities. EABL sacrificed some alcohol to make sanitizers. So basically, what other value can you add as an FMCG is probably have educational content on how to sanitize, wash your hands, and mainly all this is happening on digital and TV, being that none of us can leave our houses. So yeah, it's TV and digital, to be specific. Social media has really taken precedence in in helping brands communicate their messaging. Then for fintech, they could probably slash transactional charges for minimum spend, um, reduce loan payback, upgrade digital capabilities to cater for all payment methods, and probably use a chatbot for customer service. So this, I mean, even as a customer service rep, right? You are still being affected by this COVID-19 pandemic, and you also have to stay at home, right? So updating your chatbot customer service would do very well, and do great across the country. Then for media, I've seen Google has really tried to look after its staff by really cutting back on ad delivery and stuff. NRG Radio is also really doing a good job, as well as Jumbo TV. They've been doing a lot of TV, digital, and OB vans, basically like educating the masses on what COVID-19 is and how you can prevent. The insurance company, lastly, we've seen UAP, Liberty, and APA really leading the pack. So other recommendations would be waiving probably waiting period, reducing medical cover costs, upgrading online purchase platforms. UAP is leading here. They have ensured that digital is top of their list when it comes to helping out the target audience. And then obviously, chatbot customer service. I must say that this would actually be really nice if most of these companies would actually take all this up. Over to you, Fred.
All right, thank you, Toma. Go to the next slide. So rule number 1 was don't exploit. Number 2, add value. Number 3, while you're adding value, make sure your communication is empathetic. Whether this is internally and externally. I think most of the time brands, we forget that we have staff and we're always looking at outward communication as opposed to inward. I think we need to understand that our staff also need to hear from, especially the team leaders or the business owners. And in your external communications, again, don't drive a hard sell. Don't necessarily come in and say, you have to buy this, you need this. Ideally, we want to position brands need to be in a place where we're providing solutions, and ideally build a mutually beneficial relationship. This is not be the time, of course, you hit your revenue targets, but this is a time you could build, long-term relationship with your clients. And rule number 4, I think most of the time we want to do a lot of things, but it always comes down to we don't have time or we don't have money. I think one of the advantages we have now is we have time, and this good time to also do your housekeeping. And housekeeping is, I know sometimes we've looked at a number of things in our brands, in our businesses that we could take care of. This is a window to do that. I always like Abraham Lincoln's quote that says, if you give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, you want to spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. So when things resume, you want to make sure that your axe is sharp enough. And some of the things that you can look at during this time that you could do to actually do that is, have you looked at your website? Have you been wanting to redo your website? Is your website mobile fast? Does it load quickly? Those are things that we want to be able to, you can be able to work on at this point. Is your search engine, good? Are you ranking where you want to be? Because these are organic efforts that you can still do at this time. Have you ever thought of doing your email marketing? Have you thought of starting a webinar like us? Those are great platforms for you to retain your client base, to even upsell later on or cross-sell. Maybe that's, it's a good time to start thinking of that and doing that. Do you know your customers? Have you done your personas? Do you know what your customers really need? We've been able to do some mobile research for clients, working with M-Survey, or currently known as Azure. Again, those respect that, people still are social distancing, so you're not necessarily going to the street to ask people questions. But this is a great time to actually build your personas and so forth. Suppliers, again, have you been wanting to address something in your business and you need suppliers on board? This is a good time to actually then go through the pre-qualification space, so that then when you're putting your house, this is just some of the tips that we have top of our minds, but you can look at your individual use cases and see where or what you can do differently. And then lastly, you have to be ready for life after COVID. We'll certainly go back to what you call the new normal. Most of us may be lethargic at that time because, again, you've been home maybe for 2-3 months. You don't know how long this will be, but you need to have a bit of, if you've been actively engaging your audience, you have a bit of momentum. And we always say business is a marathon, so you don't want to start practicing when everyone else's race has already started. And one of the things we don't want to make, one of the mistakes we don't want to make is, assume that we'll go back to the old normal. I think it takes on average 2 months before a new behavior becomes automatic. This working from home may be the new normal. This, ordering stuff online may be the new normal. So is your business planning to go back to the old normal, or is your business aligning itself to the new normal that will come? So I think ideally it's looking at, again, your business's processes and what then you can do your housekeeping on to make sure that you're ready for this new normal that is coming. And we put together some best practices. We looked around on what brands are doing locally as well as abroad. We start with search. Search still has intent. I know a lot of us have pulled budgets from search because, again, we've seen the traffic drop. We've seen fewer searches coming in. But interestingly, we did a search for flights to Greece from New York this summer 2020, and actually there was an ad for there was a company, Just Fly, that's selling tickets. Because this is someone who thinks or believes that by summer, COVID will be done and they can still book their tickets now and get a very good deal. Again, we looked at hotels in Greece this summer 2020. And actually, all the top slots were all taken. All the 4 of them were taken. So again, Booking is running ads, Agoda, TripAdvisor, and so forth. These are guys who know people tend to pre-plan. People would like to get a good deal. So why should I not then be present? Again, such has intent. I would not Google hotels in Greece this summer 2020 unless I plan to be going there, or in my occasional cases someone is just around. But most cases, someone is actually looking for a solution. You can be present. We looked locally. If you search for medical cover, we've seen brands, again, all the top slots are taken. Pesa Bazaar is there. JS, UAP or Mucho is there. If you look at online grocery delivery in Nairobi, you can see there's top brands already there. So search has intent. If you're in a space where you're wondering, should I still continue spending on search? I would encourage, if you're providing solutions again, I would encourage you to continue looking at it. I would encourage you to look at it as a long term. If your cost per conversion makes sense for your business, if you're acquiring the customer at the right cost, that's still a channel we would encourage you to continue investing in. We look at, and of course, some insights on search, what people associate search with. If you're top of it, they know you're a well-known brand. If you're number 2, you're a popular brand. So basically being in that slot where your ads are, it's a good positioning. Most of us organically are not in the top 3 or in the top page 1 rather. So again, you could look at investing in that. Then we looked at social media. I think our recommendation for social media is, of course, this is an opportunity to engage contextually. We've seen that Volvo is, historically Volvo has been known as the safest car in the planet. And they went online and told you actually right now the safest place to be in isn't in a Volvo. That's a brand that understands the need to, engage contextually. Then in another post, they said, or rather, they got tagged by Porsche and they were doing garage photos. Send a photo of your car in the garage. So again, this is a brand investing time in you spending time at home as opposed to going out. We came back home and we've seen there's been a few challenges. We know KCB has always been trendy. There's a Don't Rush challenge. And they're trying to get people to actually sort of then comment and engage on the same and whether they can dare them to do it. We've seen APA rather are pushing a very contextual product, saying give your employees and the family support when they need. Our group cover compensates your employee in the event of a tragedy. Again, this is a very relevant product. We've seen very great engagement on it. And as the brand says, the mission says, we are ensuring happiness. So how do you actually provide products and solutions that deliver on that? We got some videos. I think there's space for doing emotive storytelling. I'll start with KQ. All right, that's KQ's, and I'll play another one for Emirates. Quite a similar angle.
Do you remember when they closed the schools and kids tried to learn online?
Do you
And when we
remember
heard the term
when they
social
closed the schools
distancing
and
for the
kids
very
tried
first
to learn
time?
online? And
Do
when
you
we heard the
remember
term
when we
social
worked from
distancing
home
for the very
and
first
actually
time?
missed the office and even the people we didn't get along?
From home,
When the fun
and
and the
actually
flying
missed
wasn't
the
there for us
office.
anymore, but we had to be strong. All of those things we took so much for granted were now off limits to us every day. A walk in the park, a bit of a lark, a kiss in the dark. Do you remember when we stayed away from the gyms and watched too much TV, so we put on weight and learned not to hate anything or anybody anymore except COVID-19? Do you remember when the airlines were grounded, which meant we missed our loved ones even more, but the whole world came together and said enough, no more?
Right, I guess you get the direction that those two airlines are driving at. The ability to communicate emotively. They know that they're not going to be in business for a month or so, but they still want to leave an impression, with the audience, that should when time comes, we will be here to serve you. We got some data from YouTube. Most of that content, I think Emirates ran on YouTube. KQ focused more on social media. Emirates had hundreds of thousands on YouTube, and you're looking at why you should probably look at YouTube if you have creative, emotive content to push out there. 7 million plus. I think this has grown about 2 million during this period. You can type different kinds of content from the 6 seconds non-skip, which is called the bites. You can do your snackable content, which is skippable, about 15 to 20 seconds. You can do your meal, which is 30-second plus. So again, depending on your content and your creative strategy, you can look at which content piece to push out there. But certainly, yes, we're spending a lot of time on YouTube. We looked at, in comparison, Jopol shared some data on TV viewership. We've seen that increase in some stations, seen a slight decrease in some other stations. Citizen still dominates. If you look at independently, Citizen itself versus YouTube, then YouTube certainly has a wider reach. And of course, we're turning to TV for breaking news and updates on this and that. If you combine KTN and KTN News, then they come number 2. If you look at NTV, then number 3, and so forth. Looking at data for radio, Radio Citizen, we've seen that grow. I think it has a national reach. So again, we're expecting that people will. Not everyone has access to TV, so we expect that most people are on radio, and you can see the number there: 10.7 million Kenyans are tuning to radio as of March. We are not listening to radio anymore in traffic, so as you can see, with a decrease in classic and Kiss and so forth, the kind of urban stations that we ordinarily might tune into when we are commuting to work and so forth. We looked at print and what we've seen, print and PR. We've seen Lifebuoy, was very quick in this. They came up with a fight strategy, put this in print. This is not an ad for Lifebuoy, but it's a public service message. It's brilliant. Subsequently, they went on digital PR, specifically Business Daily, and put in the article that we started local sanitizer production. We see on the far right, L'Oreal, East Africa as well, going into sanitizer production for free, against the brands that are looking at how they can actually help the communities and doing that. Then we look at our out of home, which is quite brilliant. So, of course, the majority of this was before the entire lockdown in some of the cities that Netflix operates in, but they put out this out of home spoilers. So if you're out of the house, you suddenly don't want to be seeing the spoilers if this is your favorite show. So does out of home still have a place to play? I think we've seen if you've been out and about, and I hope you've been doing that for the essential services or at least for essential reasons. We see Nairobi has not completely gone on lockdown. We still have people out there. So we still recommend that if you can negotiate a good deal with your vendor, and not necessarily push a sale, but push a public message, out of home still has a place to play for brands. And then lastly, we look at integrations that you can put in. We've seen in print, media has generated a lot of traffic. We're going to a lot of websites to consume content. Washington Post, media knows that they're suffering from lack of advertisers because most of us are pulled budget. So they've always pushed for gated content, pay to receive to read more content. The middle we saw Resolution Health, because they know we at home, encouraging you to actually use an app to access a doctor and still pay with your insurance. So again, this is a great integration where they're actually trying to find solutions for your audience. And then lastly, this is in our case with Standard Media. We are working to launch a bot that actually sells the e-paper at a third of the price. So again, we are no longer going outside to buy your your physical newspaper, but there's still an audience that prefers to consume their content online. So we built a WhatsApp bot that actually is going to go live in the next few days, and we'll be doing that. So again, there are things that you can integrate, whether it's within the solutions you have or your partners in the same space. You can come together and say, this is probably an opportunity for us to collaborate and provide the solutions for our communities or for our audience. Right. Just to conclude this, the bottom line is, if you take your foot off the gas, your brand will get passed by. That's certainly a fact. And when COVID-19 goes away, the audience will look at the brands that will be present, the brands that have been there with them through the journey, and still stand for the true value, as opposed to always pushing a sale. That's it from us. Any questions? Please, we're not able to take the audio questions. We prefer that you send in chat, and then we'll select a question that I go and then answer. I see Ian asking, I don't think out of home makes sense now, given most people are locked in their house. Ian, again, I'll go back to where we started off, where we said, at this time, are we providing solutions, or are we trying to sell products? If you're trying to sell a product, please do not put anything in your billboards. Are billboards still up? Billboards are still up. Are they empty? Probably they're still going to be empty. So instead of paying for it, maybe it's time to negotiate with your vendor and say, can we together come and put up, a public message about, health and safety? Can we say, wash your hands, stay home, stay strong, as opposed to, putting up a fridge and saying we're selling this at 50% discount? That certainly would not work. I agree with you on that. But in the sense of communicating to the masses, certainly out of home could have a role to play in serving our communities. I happened to drive by Kawangware the other day, and that place is still packed. People are still out of homes. People are still hustling. So the middle class may be at home, but the masses are still out there. So I think in that context, out of home could be having a role to play. And then there's a question from Rose. What content should the retail shop post this time? I think it depends on what the retail shop is selling. If you're selling sanitizers, I guess that's a very straightforward answer. Or any of the in-demand products. If you are pushing, cosmetics, makeup, then you could join the Don't Rush challenge and create some content around that. That's contextual. If I've seen people doing what they call the sitting room services on Sunday. You dress up and go sit in your sitting room and worship. So it depends. Rose, I guess the question is, unless you tell us what you're selling, the question is, it depends on what you're really trying to do and then aligning to that. Talma, do you want to take? There's a question about e-commerce by Millie. Do you want to take that? Any tips for e-commerce SEO?
So basically, one thing I'd advise for e-commerce, this is just basically the e-commerce sector right now is really booming because everyone is out. Everyone is inside their houses, and everyone is ordering online. So yesterday I got a mistake delivery from Backyard Shoes. I wish I actually took the the product, but I'd say just be very
Sorry, Thelma, did you lose you? Sorry, I think I might take over from that. So I guess the bottom line is if you're doing deliveries, if you have a product that people can buy online, then you do the delivery, then you want to make sure that when people are searching for that product, they find you. We've seen e-commerce in our earlier slides. We saw e-commerce has really grown. Again, depends on the category you are. People may not necessarily buy a TV now, but there are things that they may be looking to buy at this time. So it's positioning, making sure that you do your paid search, you're looking at the keywords, you make sure that your website, when I search for diapers for my baby, I actually land on the right website or page that actually has that. And importantly, of course, is your checkout process. I hope that answers you, Millie. Thank you, Elsie. And then Kefa, thank you for your question. You're asking with our niche high-end market, who is your ideal client? This is in your hospitality. Unless if you're looking at, we still have an expatriate community. We still have thousands of people who came in before the lockdown, before the airport was locked down. These are people who have been quarantined for 14 or so days. After quarantine, they may need to go to a hotel or Airbnb or serviced apartment. So if they search for availability of a serviced apartment in Gigiri, for example, are they going to find you? That's a big question. So its positioning, traffic is certainly not as high as you've always seen, but there are people who are, who live in Kenya and live in serviced apartments or live in hotels, and hotels also closing down. So this is time to actually work on make sure that when they search for you, they're able to find you. I think search has a big role to play for you. And if you have email marketing in place, you could also try that as well. And then I have Francis asking, what kind of content can an international NGO leverage in regard to country realities? Francis, that depends on what your NGO serves in. If you're, UNICEF and you're helping children, I've seen WHO do a lot of content around helping kids cope with this uncertainty. Our kids are used to going out to play, are used to going to school, and they're seeing life has changed, and they may not understand or comprehend this, the seriousness of the matter. So it depends on what your international NGO space is in. You can, I think most of you have my email address. So if you have further questions in regard to the same, feel free to, continue reaching out to us. Cedric, thank you for your question. We're providing a different avenue for out of home at Coco. Our media platform is built on top of our fuel distribution network, which consists of 650 digital fuel ATMs in metropolitan Nairobi, placed within agent shops stocking branded items. We have seen growth in the traffic to the point of fuel refills, cooking being essential right now. Communicating at point of purchase right now makes sense. Thank you, Cedric. I think that adds on to the point that out of home still has a role to play if strategically utilized. If you need to engage Coco media in regard to the out of home digital screens, Cedric, you can send your email probably, in case anyone wants to reach out to you. Then Uzoma, any tips on which industry may primarily rely on an online digital presence as opposed to traditional methods of working we've been used to? Any tips on which industries may primarily rely on Uzoma, I hope I've gotten your question. If you're asking which verticals or industries are reliant on digital presence, I think the answer lies in your customer, your target audience. Who is your target audience, and where are they spending time? If they are spending time on digital, then certainly digital is of importance. If they're not, then it depends on how you align to that. We've seen that sometimes audiences, especially B2B digital, may not be heavy, but email marketing is heavy.
Sorry guys, we're experiencing some really bad internet. I don't know if any of you are experiencing the same. Those of you who are on Safaricom Home, it keeps coming and going. So yeah, I'll just continue taking your questions. So I've seen a question from Max. Just seen a comment. Seen a trend of promoting local products and companies at this time. I guess in markets where full lockdowns have been imposed. Yeah, that's true. Sorry, that's a comment. From Elvis. So for brands that are in e-commerce but doing or selling non-essential products, i.e. electronics, what would you recommend to stay afloat in this time of corona, considering people are focused on foodstuff and similar products? So Elvis, I guess it just comes down to one thing, to your messaging. What are you actually communicating to the target audience? Like we said, the best practice for brands right now is not to sell products, but it's to actually give a helping hand in terms of messaging to your target audience. So, for example, educational content. What are the causes of coronavirus? What are we doing to actually sanitize? What are we doing to prevent? How can we probably also, instead of directly selling electronics, like perhaps if you're trying to sell a TV, for example, there's probably a way in which they catch up. Are you home board? Catch up with your latest programs using the latest Samsung TV and blah blah blah. So you just have to be very clever about how you are actually communicating to your target audience. I hope that answers your question, Elvis. Gabriella, what are your thoughts on bundling quick and slow movers during this period, especially for retailers? Sorry, I don't understand your question. If you could please expound further. I can take, for example, the real estate industry. It would be right now, for example, I have my client Lillian on the call, and yeah, so I can just say for now, like not many people are looking into actually buying homes. So you could probably um, structure your communication in a way that you are actually thinking about what happens when the whole pandemic ends, right? So you're actually trying to ask your client, tell your potential clients to think about the future, right? How buying a house right now would seem really far-fetched, but thinking about the future would actually, and telling and reassuring your target audience that you are with them during this time and after this time would actually be really good for good messaging for them. I hope that helps, Lillian. Any more questions, guys? Feel free. So I have a question from Teresa. How would you suggest marketing for a B2B online payments company at this time that was focused on travel and tourism industries? Wow. So unfortunately for the tourism industry, it's been hit really hard. And once again, I would also say that this comes down to your messaging. Same thing like real estate. Um, things are going to get better, right? And when things get better, how are you positioning your messaging to your TA? It all right now, it all boils down to one thing, which is content, and we know content is king, right? So we have to really try and reassure our target audience that things are going to be okay once this whole pandemic issue is solved. So again, your messaging, your call to action needs to really focus more on the future and how you can actually sanitize and help out, educate the target audience on what the industry or how this whole pandemic is affecting probably the hospitality industry or the banking sector and so on and so forth. I hope that has helped, Teresa. I have a question from Ian. Any novel digital marketing partnerships to consider outside the norm? The norm would be search, social display with massive reach and ROI. I'd like to introduce you to Millie of Mom's Village. She really brought out a few things that she spoke about in terms of having peer-to-peer WhatsApp groups, chatbots. How can you actually communicate with your customers or your potential customers apart from just social media and the normal display? So WhatsApp for Business is really good. We've seen a lot of e-commerce companies take it up. Banking sector has also taken up WhatsApp for Business as a way to use to speak to their customers. Yeah, so basically conversational marketing would be um, a good way to speak to your target audience right now. It's also below the funnel. When I say below the funnel, I mean it's direct return on investment. That can also cut across the real estate sector. It can cut across beauty as well. There's a lot of potential for beauty products to actually come in and help out in terms of hairstyles. You know, a lot of women like to to search online on their hair and makeup and stuff. And if your brand is there with you during this quarantine period and stuff, it would be really helpful and really engaging with your brands. I hope that has helped, Ian. There's some takeaways here from Max. I'd just like to read it out for you. Offer helpful solutions, be empathetic, inwards, outwards, lighten the mood, be funny if you've been funny, very true. Always engage your target audience, not just being funny, but have crossword puzzles, sponsor things like games, webinars, chats, hangouts. It's at the end of the day we are all human, and it would be nice to actually see that not just your family and friends, but there are brands that are also out there that are actually looking out for you. Another one, he says, for the travel and tourism sector, appeal to younger consumers, millennials, with call to actions like buy now, travel later on discounted fares, book your holiday if you're planning to travel in December, with looking into the future. It would be nice to be positive and say, actually, this pandemic won't last till then. So yeah, thanks for that, Max. Cool. If there are any more, I'd like to take two more questions and we can jump into the next phase. We have 5 minutes of polls. We'd like to know different stuff in terms of where your brand is currently active and so on and so forth. So yeah, can we take? I'll take two more questions if anyone has any questions. Fred has internet issues, so he's still trying to log in. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I'll jump into the polls and then we can end the session after. So the first one would be where your brand is currently active. You can take about 1 minute to answer, then I can jump on to the next poll. Guys, are you able to see the polls? Hold on. Just a minute. Now. So just take a minute. Cool. So everyone has said done. So I will publish the poll now. So where is your brand currently active? Um, and you can see most people have shifted their communication on social media with 77%. SMS and email comes in at 9%, and we have a tie between Google search, display, including programmatic, and others. So it would look like social media is basically the 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 channel that people are actually on. Um, so we'll jump on to the next poll. Just a minute. So the next poll will be: have you cut your marketing budgets? You can take 1 minute as well to answer that. Wow. So it looks like, wow, people are actually increasing their budgets. Those who have increased must be doing a very good job. You can tell us perhaps why your budgets have increased, and I'll take your comments and tell everyone else about it. So 35% of you have said that your budgets have reduced significantly. Would this cut across ATL as well, or just online? 29% of you have said it has reduced. Actually, 27 have reduced marginally. 22% have said no budget cuts, and 10% have increased budgets. The guys who have increased budgets, could you tell us what you are doing correctly? Maybe you can advise some of us on how we can get a significant increment so that we can actually talk more on the pandemic. If nobody has comments, we can go back into the final poll. Max, would you have any comments on that? Mercy, Ivy, Millie, Maureen. Remember, this is a discussion forum, so no answer is wrong. We're just trying to see how we can actually help each other out as an industry. Cool. So I'll jump into the next poll. So the final poll is: are you looking for an agency to support actualize your marketing plans during this situation? So I'm guessing most of us are agency guys, so no. Cool. Cool. Fred is back on. Fred? Looks like Fred is having internet connections. Right, that was really, really interesting, guys. Thank you for attending this webinar, and we have more in store for you. Yeah, thank you so much for joining, and hope to see you on the next webinar.
All right. Thanks, Talma. I think from my end, apologies for the glitch earlier. Actually had a last offer. I think before we jump off, we are giving a free brand audit to the 5 first brands that would grab the offer. And the offer is it will send you to our contact us page on the website. You give us a bit more details about your brand, what you do, and we will do your free brand audit. The offer runs now, and it's only applied to the first 5. So I think you should see it on your end. And with that, thank you everyone for joining our very first one, and we hope to reconnect again and again. Take care and stay safe, sanitize, stay strong. Anything else from you, Thelma? John?
That would be it as well for me. Thank you, guys. Like I said, we'll be having other webinars in the next coming weeks. So please be sure to attend all of them. And yeah, let's chat some more. It is an industry issue. It's an industry challenge, and maybe we can help each other out on potential. Yeah.
Cool. And if you're a client, this offer doesn't apply to you. Thank you. You're already getting that anyway. All right, cool. Thank you, guys.